Hello, this is Ruth Guthrie. I'm your instructor for CIS 421, and today we're talking about user experience and web norms. This is actually the lecture from last week, but as you probably noticed, I didn't get it together in time to do that, so we're doing it this week. There's a lot of slides, 34, but some of them are just pictures, so I think we'll get through this pretty quickly. We'll see. And I hope I don't stutter too much. I'm not working from a script, so it's just going to be stream of consciousness, and I hope I do okay. All right, why do we care about how the user feels? UX is all about how the user feels and manipulating them, getting them to do what we want on our website. So when the user visits your site, you really want to build trust between you and the user. A lot of research today in web development and user interface design is about trust. A lot of research in marketing today is about trust and building trust with the users that come to visit your site. And so the idea, if the user trusts you and has an affinity for what your site does, they're more likely to return and perhaps purchase something on your site. There's a lot of research that shows people still balk at the checkout. So a person can go to a site, search for items they want, put it all in their shopping cart, and then they get to where they have to enter a credit card, maybe create an account and choose shipping or packaging and things like that. 70% of users balk at the checkout. They leave. They've done all that work, invested all that time, and then they decide, no, I'm not going to purchase that product. When you look at why users leave at the checkout, there's three major reasons. The first is complicated and confusing checkout process. And if you've been on a site trying to do something and you have to go through CAPTCHA and it's got lots of pictures or blurry pictures of weird text, and you type it in and you get it wrong, and you type it in and you get it wrong, you generate a new picture and you still get it wrong, you can see why people might quit after that if it's not something that's critical for them to have. Another reason people balk is aggressive marketing language. If the site's too much of a hard sell, people get turned off and they start to lose trust in the site and they leave. And the last thing is hidden terms and fees. If you're buying a hotel room and then you find out, oh, there's a $25 tax per day for staying in that room, and you didn't know up front, or you're buying a cruise and there's lots of additional fees per day on the cruise and it's not expressly written up front, then you might say, okay, forget it. That's not what I thought I was paying. It makes people leave. Or if you go to the end of the checkout and then you find out shipping is an exorbitant fee, then you might balk also. So you need to create an experience that makes the user more likely to buy and then come back to your site and purchase something again. The Neilson Norman group that we are reading from a lot this term and that I mentioned during our first class session is really big into user experience, probably the most famous consulting group for UX in the country, in the world. And it drives home the idea that UX is not just the website, it's the experience for the entire company. It encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. So even after the product is sold, aftermarket service, UX is everything, cradle to grave. So you need to meet the exact needs of the customer without a fuss or a bother. Simplicity and elegance that produce products that are a joy to own and a joy to use. And then high quality UX means seamless merging of the services of UID, user interface design, marketing, graphic design, engineering, programming, and anything else you can think of. Fundamental to web UX is that you know your audience and you know what they're looking for. You need to think about who's going to be the biggest consumer on this site, who's your biggest user, and then design for that segment. If 80% of your users are soccer moms that are visiting to purchase new soccer balls and soccer jerseys, then you need to design a site that fits that audience, because the segment that has the most visitors are likely to be the segment that's spending the most money. So here's an example of a couple that shops at Macy's, and Dennis is a guy, and he likes to go there once a year, shop for all his clothes for the year, and never go back. And he doesn't spend a lot of time looking at the price tag. He just wants to get in and out of there as soon as possible. He gets a salesperson to help him, and he puts on the clothes. If they fit, he's done. He doesn't care if that shirt costs $130. Mary is really driven by getting a good deal. So she shops and looks for 30% off and has her Macy's coupons and is driven by finding a great deal. And she shops 2 times a month. So they're very, very different users, and depending on who you're designing the site for or your in-store experience for, depends on whether you're marketing to Dennis or Mary. And I'll have to tell you, I think you're marketing to Mary more often than Dennis. So the reason I talked about Dennis and Mary is that I want to get into the idea of a persona. A persona is a fictitious character that helps you design your website. The persona in this instant is the user of your website, and you design this fictional character so that you can look at that fake character and say, does my site meet your needs? So it's like a literary device to get closer to what might be going on in your user's head, and it helps you view the perspective of the end user when you design your website. This is a very, very simple persona model that I've done for Cyclavia. Cyclavia is May 15th this year, and it's down by the 710 and Firestone. So if you want to go ride your bike on some empty streets in an urban area, that's the place to go. I'm going to try to make it there, so maybe I'll see you there. So in this persona, you've got 4 squares. 1 are the attributes, descriptions of who your user is. 2, what they value. 3, what their goals are. And 4, what concerns they might have. So my user is a guy, and he lives in Los Angeles, and he's a bike rider, right? You probably wouldn't go to Cyclavia if you weren't a bike rider. Well, no, families go, everybody goes. This person, he is a bike rider, an avid biker, and he values health and wellness because he spends a lot of time on the bike, and he wants to have a good time, so fun is also a value for him. He wants to spend his weekend having a good time. His goals are to get there to the Cyclavia site, so he knows what streets are closed and where he can ride the bike. And then he wants to know where he can park his car, because he's got to get his bike to those closed streets, and he needs to know where parking is available. He wants to know if there are any other activities like food trucks, free merchandise, bike giveaways, entertainment that he can participate in at Cyclavia. And then, does this user have any concerns? Is there something that he might be worried about? He might be worried about traffic on the 710, a very busy freeway with a lot of trucks, and it might be dangerous. Oh, and last time I gave this lecture, Cyclavia was straight downtown, and you'd have to worry about whether the traffic to the Dodgers game was going to mess up your commute. And then safety, of course. Is this neighborhood? All the Cyclavia events are downtown and urban areas, and people are a little worried about safety, and is it safe to park my car here, and so on and so forth. So it gives you an idea. Knowing this about your user makes you design a site that will meet those needs. And if you look at the Cyclavia site, it does show where you can park and what the events are. Safety, not so much addressed, but it is a site that really meets this type of user's needs. This is an example of another persona. You'd simply take a photo. Sometimes you use a fake photo of someone just so you have a face to match the person to, so that when you're thinking about your site, you have a visual perspective of their face and how they'd like to use their site. You have a name, you have a description of the user. Joe is 25 years old. He's a fitness fanatic. He rides the bike, and he likes to spend his weekends doing something athletic, and so on and so forth. And then another important piece of this is what kind of technology that Joe uses. If Joe is big into Facebook and has a lot of time, 2 hours a day on Facebook, you might design your site with Facebook in mind and keep features of Facebook that are familiar to this user, so that using your site is a very comfortable place for him. If they're a big mobile user, you might want to think about how to make the site work on a mobile phone. If they're Luddites, that means somebody who hates technology and never uses it. You want to make the site as simple as possible. One giant button in the middle of the site that tells them do this. I got this picture of a persona from the internet, and it shows a picture of the person you can see, and he looks a little older, and that furrowed brow makes him look a little confused. And in purchasing a new phone, his title is the follower, meaning he's not going to be the first in. He's not going to purchase the new iPhone. He's going to wait a little while and see how it does. And you can see this persona is nicely done, that it's got behaviors that are very easy to see on this sliding scale. Handset change reason, want, need. Phone perception, high-tech toy, it's a tool. Handset discovery, is it exciting? Is it a chore? Interest in new phone, is it he always looking for a new phone, or is it only when he needs an upgrade? And then it's got some nice description of what Shen is like and how he uses the phone. And then it's got key characteristics, his age, would he consider upgrading if a life event called for a new phone, does he need a good reason to spend money on a phone, and so on and so forth. And then his goals are listed, and Shen is a follower, and he would like to wait until his contract runs up and then get a cheaper upgrade. This is more like you guys. Toby, the fashion phone upgrader. Bet you never thought of yourself that way. And now if you look at his behaviors, you can see all his items are kind of pinging out on the left-hand side. He wants a new handset. He likes a high-tech toy. The handset is exciting. He's always looking for the new phone. Would he change a provider? Yes, he would if he had the right phone. And then it's got a nice description of him too, describing him as a first-in kind of person, like many of you are, and why you're probably attracted to being a CIS major. And his characteristics are, he's a little younger than Shen, 20 to 35, very tech-savvy, and he likes to show off his phone to his friends. He's got the latest and greatest. And you can see his goals are, I've got to have the coolest phone, I've got to be up to date with the new phones on the market, and the phone needs to have as many features as possible. These are example personas for Office 365. And as you see, there's not just one persona for that suite of applications. It's a bunch of people. And you see there's a transformer. That's someone who has a flexible business where they're having employees leave and come. They need flexibility. A cost saver, somebody who's looking to reduce costs in their business. Google Complete, this person is a collaborator and they need to do a lot of group documenting and email and things like that. A task worker, somebody who doesn't always have access to a computer. And then this is me, the dated environment. So somebody who's not used to changes in technology and they want to set their Microsoft version to look like an older version. But think about all the users that use your site or your application, because all of them have different needs probably. So thinking about a site that fits the characteristics of many users. A great example of this, near and dear to your heart, that you'll never have to use again after you graduate, hopefully, is Bronco Direct. And you use it as a student, and I never get to see the student view, but it's always shocking to me when I do see it because it looks so different from the view I see. Professors also big users of Bronco Direct, secretaries, the registrar, administrators, and even IT people that help run Bronco Direct are users of that system, but they all have very different goals when they use that system. I'd also like you to think about personas as existing at different levels of the organization. For example, someone who is a bank teller uses information systems in an entirely different way than the president of the bank. They look for different kinds of information and they have different goals. Also, in understanding how people use your site, think about how they get there. Do they type in the URL? Typically, that's not the case. They'll do a Google search and they land on a specific page, and you don't know what page that is. You don't have tons of control over what page they land on because you don't know what they'll type in to search for something. So it's good to think when you're designing your site that whatever page they land on, they can figure out how to operate the entire site. If it's not the page they want, they know to click the logo and go to the home page so that they can find something else. Or they know there's a search box in the upper right-hand side, and they can type in something else and search the website for what they're looking for. So then think about what they're looking for, and that'll help you create your design by making that particular thing easy to find. Think also about what makes the user happy. And the user is most happy if they can quickly orient themselves and use the entire site. There's no confusion, there's no frustration. They know exactly where to go to accomplish the goal that they have when they visit. And then make it obvious what the site's for. If they go to a website and it's very strange looking, like I'll show you an example in a few minutes, and they can't tell what they're supposed to do there, they might just hit the back button and go back to the Google search and say, no, I must have gotten it wrong, I'll look for something else. And it's really great if they land on a site and they can tell, this is what I'm supposed to be able to do on this site. They can instantly tell, these are my options. This is the state the site is in, and these are the options I have to navigate or perform an operation on that site. What makes users unhappy? What makes them leave? Technical text that they don't know what it is. Blah, la, 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 and I don't know what you're talking about. Mystery meat navigation, that means buttons that use weird text like Job-O-Rama or Join the Club, things that they would supposedly link on, but they're not quite sure what they're navigating to, so it makes them reluctant to click, especially on a cell phone when you have to wait for the page to load again. Ambiguous language and names make it hard for a person to operate a site. It also adds risk because if they click, they'll have to go back and start over, and it might not be worth it. Using jargon instead of plain text, especially in a multicultural society, people may not understand what you're talking about. Too much text, if there's tons of text, it's tiring for the eyes and the user can't focus in on what they're looking for. So grouping text and using white space can make it much easier for the user to use a site. And then a site that's covered with ads is usually a big turnoff to a user. This is an example from Search Engine Journal, and you know, it's either Forbes or Fortune is also like this. The minute you go to look for one of their articles, you get this. Sign up for the SEJ email newsletter, or Zillow's like this too. They want you to download the mobile app instead of go straight to the website and things like that, which lots of sites are like that, but it's irritating. You don't want to go through this gatekeeper before you find the content for the site. This is the example I promised you of mystery meat navigation. And if you go to bluebell.com, it's pretty interesting, though it would be kind of neat if one of you made a site, or several of you made a site like this for the class to see what users did and how well they figured out what the icons meant. So this is a site for an ice cream company, and it's a screenshot, so you can't see. But the reason it says Join the Country Club is because my mouse went over where it says Bluebell Country Club, and you can see this pop-up window. But every little box on this antique-looking frame has a little pop-up that tells you where you're going, though Join the Country Club is an ambiguous word. People might not know what that means, though it does have the help text download coupon, so you know you can get a coupon for Bluebell ice cream there. Though Donald Norman would say the design has failed because why do you need text to help the person use the site? But it is an interesting site in that all the content is hidden and you have to use your mouse to discover what is there. Make sure your graphic elements on the page make good sense. You need to make them relevant, not showing pictures of things that don't matter. It was when the Winter Games were in Russia, you'd go to that website and you'd see pictures of stuffed animals, which most people going to the Winter Games website aren't really interested in a cute stuffed animal. They'd rather see an athlete on the homepage or learn about events or how to buy tickets. If you have to do advertisements, they should be related to what the user is looking at. And then sometimes showing people in photos can be a really compelling thing to convince users to do things. Text elements on the page. Get rid of the happy text, because we know people scan, for the most part, websites and don't read them. Useless words that create lots of unnecessary reading are never going to be seen, and they just have the effect of cluttering up your site. the mechanics of text on the site is make sure it's a readable font. Little scripty, cute fonts, not so great unless it's a highly stylized site where that's expected. You really want something that's going to be much more readable. Contrast. You need to have contrast between your text and your background. And I cannot tell you how many times in this class I've seen a student site with a black background and dark gray text because it looks very technology oriented, but it's very hard to read. Make the size of the text adjustable for accessibility. So if a user types Control+, the text is going to get bigger and make it more readable. Google is a great example of a very minimal site that doesn't use any text at all. And I've got 2 more examples for you where the text could probably be improved in some ways. Mount Wilson and Forest Lawn. This is the homepage for the Mount Wilson Observatory, though I do think they use their Facebook page more than their website. And we see a tagline, a second century for America's observatory. I am not sure what that means. Well, I guess I know, but it's odd. And then it starts off with, in the first half of the 20th century, eminent astronomers such as Harlow, Shapley, and Edwin Hubble used the incomparable facilities of Mount Wilson Observatory to forever alter humankind's view of our place in a vast and expanding universe. Blah! That's one sentence. It's huge. And it does. It talks about the past and today. That's a ton of text, and the user's probably looking more for how do I get to Mount Wilson? How do I sign up for the tour? Or what famous discoveries occurred at the Mount Wilson Observatory? And I got to tell you, I was there a couple weekends ago. Fantastic. You should go. It's incredible. But less text and maybe more of a nav bar would make this a more useful site. Forest Lawn. I don't know why that came into my head today, but this is your example for today. And the site really does have very minimal text. But in mousing over the quick guide, it came up with the text for the icons. So something like, time of loss. If a loved one has died, we are very sorry for your loss. Please give us a call. We're here to help at any time of the day or night. And probably some shorter version of that, we're here for you during your time of loss, would be much more direct and sincere. It seems like 3 sentences strung together that kind of dance around what they're trying to say but don't really get to it. Find a service or grave. Simply follow the steps in this section and make your selections to find a loved one's upcoming service, their memorial location, or their online obituary. And it's, that's one sentence also, and it's very long, telling you probably what you already know about what that icon means because of the text underneath it. So instead, maybe say, find a loved one's service, gravesite, or online obituary. End of sentence. And very simple and straightforward. Those are the 3 things you can do under service. Consistent design, and we've already talked about this a little in class, keeping the design consistent so the user knows how to use the site. And we talked about the Blackboard, how every professor has a different design for their site, and as a student you learn a new interface in Blackboard every time you go into a different course. So if it was consistent, it would be much easier to use, and you wouldn't have to learn each professor's idiosyncratic design methods with Blackboard. But you do have to. But the advantage if you do have consistent design is that there's no learning curve. The idea is to take advantage of what is already in the user's head. Their knowledge of using the internet and navigating websites is how you're going to make your design very useful. They're used to seeing specific layouts. They're used to seeing menus on the left and at the top. They're used to clicking to navigate through the site. And they're used to a certain structure and a logical hierarchy that really helps them use a site easily. So navigation, if you have a lot of items, then it makes it hard for a person to figure out what to click on because their eyes have to search through what all the options are, and then they have to select what they're looking for. If they can't find what they're looking for, they have to guess. So different strategies for organizing your navigation can be popularity. Put the most popular item, what everyone's looking for, put that at the top. promoted content, like you see in Google, the promoted content is at the top and it's indicated that it's an advertisement, so you don't have to select that if you don't want. And then sometimes you go with alphabetical listings, because if it's a long list, somebody can quickly navigate through the alphabet, whereas navigating through 100 items that aren't alphabetized might be very, very daunting. And someone wrote about this in our design book, but George Miller in 1956 wrote an article called The Magic Number 7. Actually, recent studies suggest that the number is actually 4, not 7, and that people have trouble with even 7 things to focus on. The idea is if you have too many items on your nav bar, people can't cognitively deal with that kind of load. You need to keep the number small so people can see these are my choices and select one. If there's too many choices, it confuses them and they can't select. The way people compensate for this type of cognitive load is by chunking information together. So if I was at Petco and I needed to navigate their site, I would look for products for dogs, products for cats, and products for birds, and products for other. That lets me navigate a site based on 4 items. Well, there might be 50 links associated with all 4 of those things. But being able to chunk them into 4 items makes it easier for me to cognate them and navigate the site more easily. This is a screenshot of the Claremont AYSO Region 3 website. This is where my son plays soccer, and I always laugh when I see this page, and it never improves, but you can see the nav bar on the left-hand side. There's a lot going on there. Welcome, registration, U5 program, volunteers, VIP, coaches, parent information, referee, scheduler, etc., etc. And it's not alphabetical, and it's not ordered in any particular way. And if I wanted to make this site more usable, I would, so that people wouldn't go and have to read every single item until they found what they were looking for. If I wanted it to be more useful, I'd probably divide it up as teams, parents, referees, and clinics, and then maybe some other things about administration of the Claremont AYSO organization. Much easier to deal with 4 things than with 25. Adding a search to your website is also a really important thing to have so that users can operate your site if they can't quite figure out the nav. I'm always stunned in a class when I ask who uses the navigation, and almost no students say that they use it. All of them go directly to the search bar. So the norm is that the search bar, the search box, is in the upper right-hand corner of the site, and it's on every single page. People love this, especially on a giant site, because it's very easy. If you're lost or you don't know how to find something, you go straight up to the search, and presto, you can find the information you want. In designing a search box, it's interesting that the size of the box matters. Or if you're designing a survey and you want people to give you feedback, the size of the box matters. If you put a tiny box, even though it can extend when the user's typing, the user will put in a smaller amount of text. If you make the box longer, the user will input a longer entry. It's good, once the search is completed, to repeat the search term on the results page so that if there's an error, a user can immediately see it. And it's also good to list the results that were found and include thumbnails so the user can instantly see, oh, I made a mistake. That's not what I was looking for. This is a search on Fries.com for Surface Pro, and I left the R out of Surface, and this is what came up, interestingly enough. The good thing is it did ask, do you mean Surface, Surface, or Surface Pro? And I did. I meant Surface Pro, but that's not what I typed. But this is what the search engine told me also. It shows me a picture of what it did find, a Cytec Pro Flight Cessna rudder pedal. Who knew that was even a thing? It must be for some flight simulator game, $200 or something. But it shows me a picture, so I know immediately, no, I did the search wrong. That's not what it was. And nicely, it shows me the price. So if that's out of my range, I can eliminate that and look for something else. And then it tells me it's sold out. So I know I cannot pick that up at the store. I'll have to put it on back order. But the results of the search are very informative beyond this is a set of links you could click on and see if you find what you're looking for. It gives me the information right away. Hyperlinks as a user interface device, golden. Blue underlined text or on hover something happens, people know that's what I click on. It's like the light switch of the computer. That's what I click on to get to other places and visit other things. Indicating a visited link is also very, very useful. Making your visited link a different color is great because then if they clicked on it and returned and it wasn't what they were looking for, they know I've already been there and I'm not going to click on that again. Mystery meat, like the Bluebell example we saw, if they cannot tell where they're navigating because of ambiguous text or text that doesn't even show up until you mouse over an object, that can be very, very frustrating. A big no-no in user interface design is having the text click here for more, click here for this, click here for that. And Donald Norman would agree with that because if you need extra text to tell someone what to do, then your design has failed. People know what they can click on because we've made it obvious by using conventions that are familiar to users. We do not need to use the text click here, so don't put that in any of your websites. Or do it just to make me mad. That would be pretty funny, to make a click here page. Make the links and words obvious, put related links, and then if it's a long, lengthy page, you might have in-page links that help people go back to the top of the page. Breadcrumb navigation is also a very, very popular way to help the user navigate a site, and there's an example below from Amazon's Kindle store. Fitt's Law. Fitt's Law, the main thing is put your hit target close to where your mouse is and make sure that it's gigantic. And I'm sure you've been to a site where you went and did a bunch of manipulations and then to submit the form, you had to move your mouse far away. If you want someone to have a better chance of completing the transaction that they did, you want to put the submit button right next to the last thing they do on that form. You want the target to be near where the user is putting their mouse, and you want the target to be big. So another example is the brake versus the accelerator. The brake is always bigger than the accelerator because you want to be able to stop. Start versus stop buttons. Think about the treadmill at the gym that you're going to, and you need that start button to be big and in the middle. In case somebody falls off the treadmill, they can press that button and they won't get skid marks from the tread going around in circles. And then the studies showing what's most accessible to the user, what's most efficient for the user, is the middle of the screen being the best location. Also, a longer hyperlink is easier for a user to hit. If you have older users and your hyperlinks are only 4 characters long, they're going to have a hard time operating that link. If you make it several words long, much easier for a user to operate, old or young, I suppose. And then the user's expectation is that buttons will be on the bottom right-hand side of the screen because that's how we usually operate something when we're reading and things like that, though in other cultures that might be quite different. And if you're left-handed, that might be quite different too. This is an example of how a longer hyperlink is easier to hit. Maybe you can just see it. The word links is tiny and it kind of blends into the page. The longer hyperlink is several characters long and it jumps out at you a little more, and certainly it would be easier to hit because it takes up about 1/3 of the screen on that line. This is an example of click area and where's the best place. This is the lower right-hand side of the page and I'm on the computer. I've got my hand on my mouse and right there, click. Very, very easy. This is if it's at the top of the page. Have to scroll up and click way up there at the top of the screen. Very awkward. If it's in the middle, very obvious, very easy, though for me less obvious than the lower right-hand corner. If it's at the upper left, very awkward again. And if it's at the lower left, again, that's awkward. The sweet spot would be right at the bottom lower part of right-hand side of the screen. Now let's talk about how people read the internet. People scan. They do not read every word. They scan, and they scan in an F shape. They've taken heat maps of web pages, and you can see where the user eye focuses, and the place that they focus most is in the upper left-hand side of the website. And then you can see they've read one line, and maybe they skipped down a little, read another line, and then on down the left-hand side of the page, because that's usually where the nav is. But they scan. They don't read every word. The rule of thumb is that the first 11 letters of most chunks are what is scanned. So if there's paragraphs, the first 11 letters are what they're going to see. So don't fill up those first 11 letters with happy text that doesn't tell them what's in that paragraph. Try to make your writing accommodate something that's useful for the user to see. Something great for any user and great for accessibility is to put the important things at the top of the page. If a person's going to visit a page and you know ahead of time what the most important thing is, it's in your interest to put it at the very top so the user sees it. They may never see the bottom part of your page. Many people use a skipping behavior when they read, and they read in an F shape. The exception is lower literacy web user, and that is described as 43% of U.S. adults, surprisingly. But if you're a low literacy user, you're really worried about understanding what is on the web page, and you'll spend the time and read every single word. And not surprisingly, comprehension goes up when there's less text. If you have less text to focus on and to read, clearly you'll retain and understand a good deal more of it. It's important to make the homepage clear so that when somebody comes to it, they can see exactly what the site is for, either visually or textually. It should be obvious. It's also good to explain how that site might meet a person's needs, particularly the person that you're designing for. Make the person feel good with the most recent compelling content or links to the top goals that that person has to accomplish on that website. Don't waste time with blah, blah, blah text. Kill the happy text. And then you might entice the user by giving them a call to action. Tell them visually or textually what you want them to do on your site. Invite them to do it. You may have heard of this already in CIS 311, a 5-second rule. Can somebody decide in 5 seconds what they can do at your site? So if you show someone your screen for 5 seconds, then shut it off, can they tell what is the site about? What are the subtopics that the site covers? What is the call to action? What does the designer want me to do on that site? And did you want to continue exploring that site, or did you want to go away? And then you can ask them, what do they remember about the page? What is the site about? And there's a page called clueapp.com where you can actually try this out on a classmate. Maybe we'll do that in our first set of user testing. I think that would be fun. That's it for today, and the bottom line is there's a lot of things to think about. There's lots of things that have to play together, and you're dealing with a person, so lots of things are undefined. And then in this class, take a risk, do something different, and see what happens when you're testing it, because we're going to find out how that particular design element works by testing it on real people, and we'll do that in class. See you all soon. Bye.